And from the top of West Mountain in Scranton, Pennsylvania, good morning, everybody. This is 94.3 FM, The Talker, Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. We have X on the line, Frank Sorick in studio. And if you want to start your Labor Day weekend off just right, you give us a call, blow off a little steam, 888-577-4487. That's 888-577-4487. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, everybody. We have a interesting little situation I had here in Texas, and recently I switched jobs, so I had to get some temporary insurance until mine kicks in. And we got on a site where we could buy some insurance, and of course I said, "Don't give me Obamacare. I don't want Obamacare." And it turns out, Lou, which is very interesting, there's a company which is well known called United Healthcare.
Yeah.
And according to the source that I spoke to about buying insurance, that United Healthcare is the only one that, out of all the insurance companies, that refused to be part of Obamacare. Huh. So I thought, our listeners might find that interesting, that when you're searching for insurance, if you're really, as we spoke so many times, Lou, on the radio, that, you sort of vote with your pocketbook, that, if you need insurance and you don't like Obamacare, maybe we should support companies like United Healthcare. Here, a little tidbit.
Here's a question, and I don't know the answer. Don't believe a word we say. Are folks, Frank, maybe you know, or Michael, maybe you know, now with these change of laws, are you allowed to buy United Healthcare in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Are you? Is it? Well, prior to what was going on, remember there were only certain insurance companies you were allowed to buy from.
It would depend if they're writing in Pennsylvania, but I believe under Obamacare they're not allowed to say we're no longer going to offer policy in a certain state.
Is that right, Michael, or you're not sure about that either? Or maybe one of our listeners could call in and inform us. Educated.
I'm like Nancy Pelosi here. I'm still confused over Obamacare, and I'm so glad it was passed so that we could find out what's in there. Because prior, I had no clue.
You sound a little slight bit cynical there, Frank.
Not at all.
I think it's well warranted. But what I found interesting, Frank, is that this United Healthcare, they're only allowed to write your policies for 6 months. And then it changes, because the reason they do that is because they don't know where the health care bill is either. Yeah. What they write for us today might not be valid tomorrow. What I also noticed that was very interesting was they kind of look at it and evaluate you after 6 months, like you're like a driver's, like a car.
Oh, right.
We're gonna
check you out. See if there's any diseases. See if you have any problems. Then they'll dump you.
Exactly. I didn't tell them that I was friends with Lou Jasper. I knew it would really get up their eye.
That's a smart thing, Michael. That is very good. That's a smart thing. How do we sleep while our beds are burning? Let me tell you, man. So anyway, Mike, we caused quite a stir this week here in Wilkes-Barre. And
we let the cat out of the bag.
We did let the cat out of the bag, and it was been a busy week. John got the third edition of the Carbon County Independent Gazette out, so that's well on the way, and it looks like certainly a similar type structure is coming for the Poconos in October. But where we really caused a stir was we reported online a story about our local Wilkes-Barre police chief, Chief Dessoye, leaving to take a position at King's College.
Correct.
And this is a story that really caused a stir, right, Frank? I mean,
it did. There's a couple of reasons that it caused a stir. As you may remember, just a week ago, 2 police officers and several members of the Wilkes-Barre Employees Federal Credit Union were indicted on federal corruption charges. So that's part of the issue. Is 1 week later, and the Times-Leader did an excellent job. We didn't report that fact. We just reported the facts. We didn't make the correlation. We just said, hey, Jerry's leaving, and this is where he's going. But the Times-Leader took it a step further, and they said he's leaving because...
As I understand it, the Times-Leader actually used the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Independent Gazette as their source.
They absolutely did.
So, but Michael, where this really caused a huge stir was that, from what we've heard, and you could, not only did the media Jerry Dessoye, the police, Layton, King's College did not want this story out. So we've kind of dragged everybody along screaming and yelling,
Right.
and there you go. So that's one of the advantages of what we're doing.
Well, we know it's interesting. We talked so many times, even all the way back to lag towing, Lou, that
Yep.
this would never even have been addressed. Period. The wrongdoings would still be occurring in Wilkes-Barre, despite how much Mark Robbins screamed and yelled. There had to be a source of getting
keep it in
information
news.
out,
Yep.
and this is what independent paper does.
Well, and then what happens is also, Michael, is that once again bringing people along, and once again we have launched our subscription drive. So especially folks locally, get involved if you can. If it's within your budget, it's relatively low to subscribe to us either on a monthly basis or even on a yearly basis. But all that information is online. You can certainly contact us, and one of the things that we have put out is if you're supporting the Times Leader, Citizens Voice, or Scranton Times, if all they're doing is getting you aggravated, perhaps maybe you want to get involved with us so that we can pull them along and force them. And that's exactly what's happened. We have forced them now. From what we've heard, Michael, is that nobody wanted this story out.
Right.
And once we broke the story, it was like the floodgates opened here. And
a Times Leader reporter called me on this shortly after our article went live, and he told me, he said, we've been trying to nail this down for quite some time.
Right.
So they knew about it. They couldn't print it because nobody would confirm it, and they didn't have any sources that would tell them, mainly because they wanted them to put their name on the article.
Now, Frank, how long were you trying to get some confirmation out of City Hall?
I was trying to get some confirmation for days on this. I sent my first email to Liza on Sunday requesting and figuring, well, she'll get back to me sometime Monday and tell me whether I'm way off base or this is preposterous. She ignored me. So I tried calling her on Monday. Of course, she wouldn't take my call, but I was assured she would call me back. Yeah, I didn't hold my breath. Good thing, right?
And what we found funny, Michael, is that once after we wrote the story and then the Times Leader picked up on it after us, everybody spoke to the Times Leader. So we still have this blackout from
Except
City
for Jerry
Hall.
Dessoye. Their headline is...
just so I wouldn't speak with him.
He absolutely
wouldn't speak with nobody, right?
No, that was Jerry Lynette's headline in the Times Leader was Dessoye won't speak to Times Leader.
But the point is, Michael, is even though there's a blackout from perhaps City Hall, that's okay because we know that. And whether they talk to us or not, I guess then we have to make assumptions about what they're going to say, as long as we give them an opportunity to talk. So why is this important, folks? Why is this relevant? Okay, so you have a police chief, Frank. We talked about this.
This is not a big deal. I mean, you have former police chiefs that retire as soon as they're retirement eligible. They take other jobs, and that's fine. I mean, we've seen it with the Wilkes-Barre police chief with Bill Barrett, who is the head of campus security at LCCC.
Right.
We've seen it with Tony George. They've all retired, so it's not unusual for this practice. So why is Jerry hiding? Couple of reasons. The Times Leader did a great job. I keep pointing to that in the correlation between 1 week after police officers are indicted, Jerry is leaving the force. So that's one reason they don't want the story out anytime soon, is they wanted some distance between the FBI slapping the police down and Jerry running away like a scared little girl.
Right. So we have part of that, but then also when we have to start looking at, Michael, the relationship. And now this really starts raising some questions for us. Right. And certainly we're going to be bringing it up. And once, Michael, we bring it up, the other papers and other media now have to start, well, geez, we can't have those guys doing it again to us.
Well, are you talking about the relationship between King's College and the city of Wilkes-Barre? Is that the relationship?
Right. And it's okay, Frank. It's okay for any organization to say have a cozy relationship with perhaps the administration, but not incestuous relationship.
If I were the president of Wilkes University, I would file a lawsuit against the city at this point. It seems like the city will only hire from Kings.
Right.
That to me is discriminatory between anyone who gets an education at Wilkes. They don't have a chance at city hall jobs at all.
And Michael, there's been some other questions that have been brought up, and we haven't had the opportunity to really dig into this. But it's okay to raise questions. That's why we have a show. That's why we have this opportunity to be able to talk about this. What happened? We certainly have to look into now what happened with the Greco lawsuit. Correct, Frank?
Right. Absolutely.
And how that relationship with Wilkes, with Leighton.
That's still ongoing. I can't wait to see how that wraps up.
Right, Mike. So you're a little familiar with all of that stuff for sure.
Yes.
Certainly another question that's been brought up, are they buying more houses and more homes than their 501? Mike, do I have that right?
There was a gentleman's agreement, and I got this from the previous administration at City Hall. There was an agreement between the former mayor and King's College that they wouldn't expand any further into Main Street or that business district.
Right.
And the Ramada Hotel, of course, would include that agreement. That has, since...
But these are some things that we have to look into,
Right.
and certainly, Michael, does that jeopardize some of their 501(c)(3) status? There's a lot of different things that we have to look in.
Honestly,
so we're throwing these things out. We're not saying, but these are legitimate questions that we need to look into and research. And as we research this certainly is going to force other media to research it also, Michael, because once again, they do not want to be scooped on this stuff by the Independent Gazette again.
Well, it's interesting. I'm listening to all this, and Frank, just a prediction of who do you think the next chief will be?
Well, we actually wrote that,
we
too.
did. We named a chief. From a few of our sources that are close to the police department said that it will be Detective Coffee. Now, that remains to be seen as to whether or not Detective Coffee will be the choice, but I have two sources very, very close to WBPD that assure me that is who the next chief will be. And as a taxpayer...
And Captain Hughes.
Well, as a taxpayer of the city and as a resident of the city, I'm thankful that it will be Detective Joe Coffey because he is an awesome, awesome police officer. So I think he'll make a great chief.
So Michael, once it, just keep going back to this, and certainly the way this whole thing developed. Frank had called us during the week sometime and said, listen, we have this story. And then we got together with John DiLiberto, myself, and Frank, and we went over it. And should we do it? Should we not do it? And finally, once we pulled the trigger, and now, I'm glad we did because,
it's out there.
It's out there. We trusted our sources. Right. And once again, the media, even though they're on it now, right. which is good.
Let me just point out that neither King's, the spokesperson, or the mayor have denied the story. They denied knowledge of it, certainly. Oh, we don't know anything. But they didn't deny this story. They didn't deny that Jerry would be coming over to King's or would be leaving the city employment anytime soon.
Do you think Leighton's reading the Independent Gazette yet?
I always say that he's reading it on the throne for medicinal purposes.
Oh my God. So Michael, so that's it. And once again, we're really proud about the what we've been able to do and what we've been able to accomplish, and certainly the reason why we need independent press. We're not the only independent press out there, but it's really important, whether it's the bloggers, whether it's the Independent Gazette, whether it's, other media besides right. the mainstream media, only because
they raise questions.
We raise the questions right. that, and Frank, as well as I do, we've been fed stories where they want, even the media has said
right.
to us, would you guys please look at it so that maybe once you break it, we can report on it.
They know the same thing, that once you break the initial story, it's like opening the floodgates.
Right. According to this.
Right.
And now they don't have to take the responsibility or tick off their, their donor base, so to speak.
That too. And more people come forward. I mean, once you open those floodgates, Lou, and you say, okay, we have this, well, then other sources from within wherever will come forward and say, I know about it as well.
Yeah, what do you want us to do? The Gazette broke the story, so now we have to stay on it.
Exactly.
And once again, that's one of the reasons, Michael, it's important for folks maybe to get involved with subscribing to our newspaper, only because that's anonymous. Nobody needs to know right. who you are, whatever. And at the same time, you're helping helping support this cause to bring good media and transparency to even our local press.
For less than a Starbucks Frappuccino.
Is that what it is?
That's what
I don't get Starbucks Frappuccino. Michael, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we got X. We're going to talk a little bit about the Constitution and what's happening over there in Syria and what we can do about it. You're listening to Sanity Check, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Don't listen to a word I say. The screens all sound the same. For the truth may vary, this ship will carry out what he said to show.
That's what we say. Don't listen to a word we say. 94.3 FM, The Talker, Sanity Check, Libertarian Lucy Party Mike. We got X coming on. Frank Sorick in studio. Michael, this past week, just listening to what's going on, obviously, in the Middle East. And I got to start thinking here a little bit about,
Yeah, they're kind of hypnotic.
What's that? So anyway, we got something going on here. Is that was that X? And okay, X. Oh, X. So anyway, Michael, what kind of got to me a little bit was folks are all talking about, how Obama should be leading over in the Middle East. And certainly he came out with that statement that he didn't have any plan and all these other things. And it got me to thinking a little bit here. And, Article 1, Section 8, Congress shall have the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning capture on land and water, to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to the use shall be longer than 2 years. So is this not the right time? Is this not the right time for Boehner, for folks in Congress to maybe take back that power that is granted them by the Constitution? One of the things that we say all the time is that many in our legislature and certainly in Congress have abdicated their power. Is this the time to do it? Is this the time to say, why are they not leading? Or, as X might want to bring up here a little bit in a moment, is there a reason for that, Michael?
Well, Lou, I think the big reason that they're not acting is because of politics. They're looking at this November election and they're just going to sit tight and not do anything and point the finger at Obama and hope that gets their win. And I don't think that's what the American people are looking for. We're looking for leadership that goes out there and gets it. And I think that's what the Republican Party is missing here, is that lack of leadership to say, the Constitution has been stamped on by this president. He doesn't care. And now here's a decision, an ability for Congress to finally step up and start showing some leadership, Lou. And they're not doing it at all. They're just going to keep pounding at this president in hopes that they'll win this election in November. Certainly wrong politics in my mind, Lou.
X. So there you go. There's your lead in. There's the softball. This is the softball question for you. Should Congress start taking the lead in? And you're going to be throwing out an initiative here that you want us to put in our papers and publications, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that stands out again is the fact that Obama is not going to go to anyone for permission if he knows that he's going to lose. And Congress is not going to want to have this responsibility of voting on something like this if they know that their constituents might do what they don't want. So, this is kind of the funniest thing. It's like we have a representative government that the thing they don't want to do is take responsibility if they have to be representing people. Right. So this is the example of, remember, it wasn't even about a year ago that Obama was supposedly going to go to Congress and get permission to bomb Syria. And when he knew that the American public was overwhelmingly, we're talking Republicans and Democrats, united against intervention in Syria, suddenly the vote gets called off and they somehow say that, we'll try something else. But the reason for not doing it was the fact that if it had gone through, it would have been a black mark on Obama's record because the public would have rejected something that he wanted to do, and not in a small way. It wouldn't have been a 51-49 type of vote. This would have been something like, I think at the time, about a year ago, there was like 80% of the population plus was against us. So this is what's going to be very interesting going forward.
Yeah, and why are we hearing crickets out of Congress? I mean, really. I mean, this is it seems to me so hypocritical when we have people in Congress, screaming at Obama to get some kind of a plan, yet they have the authority. I mean, what am I missing here? I mean, they have the authority, from our Constitution to really lead the way here. So, I mean, what am I missing? Go ahead, Frank.
You assume they've read it.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, if they haven't read they do put their hand on the Bible and swear to uphold the Constitution. I would hope. I mean, it's not that thick, Frank. I mean, they should be able to get this. This is not Obamacare here.
I understand. But these people are just the way they all trample on the Constitution. I have to assume they didn't read it.
I gotta think what X is saying here is spot on. Is that they don't want to lead? Is that right, X?
Oh, absolutely. Why lead? Because leading gets you in a position where people can tell you're wrong. It's kind of like and this is kind of one of these strange things. But nothing really good has ever come from a committee decision. You ever notice, like, most of the innovators and really creative people in life that drive humanity forward, it's never a committee. It's always one man with a vision, or maybe a small group of committed people to an ideal that drives something. It's never, let's get 25 people in a room and we're all going to centrally plan how to fix something. It never works. But and I've done a lot of these, discussions with maybe large boards of charitable groups and stuff like that. And when you ask them to make a decision, you know what they're all sitting in a room looking around going, I don't want to be the first one to say this. I don't want to be the second one to say this. They all want to get to the point that way when something goes wrong, which is in the back of their mind. If something goes wrong, I can blame the other guys. Or I wasn't alone in making a decision. And that, and that's the whole point about being a leader, isn't it? Of being a leader is standing up to a group of people and saying they're wrong or disagreeing with them despite what the polls are saying. And that's what, what's interesting about this. Obama says the reason why he doesn't want to have a strategy is because he hasn't taken enough polls yet. That's the reason.
Go ahead, Michael.
No, I was just listening to X, and he brought up a great point. There's an old saying that leaders are like eagles; they fly alone, and I think that is so applicable here. And nobody wants to fly alone. This Congress just stands back and just waits for Obama to make the decision, and just like X says, so he can make the mistake, so they can point the fingers. I would rather have somebody there giving me leadership. And going to make mistakes along the way, but giving me real leadership, the reason to stick out there and say, I'm not interested in my next political position. I'm not interested in the photo ops. I'm interested in running this nation. And Congress, once again, the finger's pointing at you because you haven't done anything at all to lead this nation. You've allowed this president to just do what he wants to do. And I think X's point is absolutely perfect. If you make a decision, if you show leadership, then you risk yourself of being called wrong. And I think this is a real valid point.
And we're heading into election time, and certainly locally here we'll have congressmen. We don't have any U.S. senators, but certainly I think those are legitimate questions to ask our local congressmen, or the three of them up here, at least, to say, why are you not leading the way? Why are you just throwing this ball to Obama? Not that he shouldn't be at least out there leading, but obviously he's not. And, if the Constitution gives Congress the authority to lead, this just to me seems like I don't know if I'm missing something here, but if you say, okay, listen, you're complaining about the guy not leading. You're complaining about the guy not having a plan. You're complaining about all these things that you have the authority to actually do something about it. So why don't you do it? And I think we're answering our own questions here. I mean, that's not, So X, you have come up with a little initiative of yourself that you want us to throw out there. Certainly, as the Hillarys of the world start beating the war drums, the McCains of the world start beating the war drums. You have an initiative, I guess, to go out to the McCains and the Clintons. Correct?
I do. I don't know what we're going to call it. I don't know if I want to call it the Mr. X Challenge or the Muckraker Challenge, but this is what it is.
Challenge.
I'm offering $10,000 and a pick from my personal arsenal at home to any high-ranking member of government to volunteer their children to go and fight ISIS. See, because it seems like ISIS has no problem raising an army from places all over the world, according at least to the media,
Right.
to go fight for their cause. So I'm volunteering our politicians' children, and I'm offering, don't worry about it, I'm going to pay for it. So if Hillary Clinton's daughter Chelsea wants to go fight ISIS, I will have her come. She can come over to my house. She can pick the gun that she wants to, and I'll buy her a plane ticket, and I'll give her $10,000 in cash. The stipulation, though, is you have to be a high-ranking member or a child of a high-ranking member of our government, and you actually cannot be a member of the military, and you also need to actually go to the front lines and fire the weapon at least 10 times at the enemy. I don't want anybody in the rear with the gear, so to speak, trying to claim that they're doing something. I don't want anybody running off to thinking that they can hide in the National Guard or something along those lines. Or I don't want them going over there and they're providing, water and food. No, you have to go to the front and fight.
Yeah. Well, they're very quick to send other folks over there.
This challenge is going to be accepted and taken down instantly. All Chelsea has to do is go over there and deliver one of her mother's speeches. They'll surrender in 10 seconds.
Well, she has time now. From what I understand, she just retired from her $600,000 reporter job, I believe, from NBC. How do you like that? What do you think she was doing for?
God only knows.
God only knows. $600,000. I mean, that's fantastic. So she certainly has time.
Did anyone hear any stories that she broke? I mean, what did she do?
I have no idea, and who cares what Chelsea does? But I think what's more important
here. I think she quit the job, Luke, because she's coming to apply at Muckraker.
How much? 600,000.
600
a year, maybe 600 a year. We could figure out, but that might be a stretch also there, Michael.
Better subscribe now.
Better subscribe now. So listen, we need to take another break. X, we got you on record. You're in trouble now. We're taking a break. 94.3 FM The Talk. You listen to Sanity Check.
There's Sanity Check. Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM The Talker.
So wake me up when it's all over. When I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself and I didn't know I was lost. So wake me up when it's all over.
Please.
Wake me up.
Wake me when it's all over. Michael, I don't know when that's going to be, man. You listen to 94.3 FM The Talker, Sanity Check with Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike, and the rest of the crew here. Michael, you going to wake us up?
I think it's too late for that. I think X has already done that with his offer, but I don't think he's in trouble because I don't think there's going to be one that takes it. And I just want to remind everyone that, we've been speaking about Hillary and Chelsea taking it, but right now, Hillary is not a high-ranking political office, so she
wait till she's president.
Right. Oh, please, come on, give me a break. Hey, X, is this? Can anybody from the Gazette staff take you up on that offer? Or what?
Chelsea,
See, that's the problem. The purpose of the challenge is to prove the hypocrisy within our elected officials. Because, let's just think about this. I mean, in the last couple of weeks here, I'm hearing people talk about how ISIS now is worse than Saddam Hussein. ISIS is worse than Al-Qaeda. I mean, every time you turn around, the rhetoric from all of these people just keeps going to a new level because what they're trying to do is they're trying to hype the public up. I mean, does ISIS have an aircraft carrier? Does ISIS have atomic weapons? Does ISIS have a troop transport? Does ISIS, what are they? They're a bunch of guys.
In pickup trucks.
In pickup trucks with some machine guns and maybe some stuff. And it's interesting, all of their weapons and a lot of the stuff that they have is stuff
they got from us.
That's right.
They borrowed it from the Iraqi army. So anyway, listen, to switch gears a little bit. Yesterday on Voices, and I wanted to, that's a Facebook page and certainly a place I encourage folks to go if you're dealing with the family courts. But there was a quote from Jefferson, Michael, on there, and it says, the germ of destruction of our nation is in the power of the judiciary, from Jefferson. Irresponsible body working like gravity by night and by day, gaining a little today and gaining a little tomorrow, and advancing its noiseless step like a thief over the field of jurisdiction, until all shall render powerless the checks of our branch, of one branch, over the others, and will become so venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. You know, Michael, we've been raising the flag about the judiciary, and we're going to be writing some stories. I'm certainly looking into, once again, we're overwhelmed with stories about the judiciary, but, we talked about Congress abdicating their authority, and we do have elections coming up here locally for our legislature, and we need those folks, especially these new faces, to start standing up and saying, this is that line that, or that separation that they need to take the power that they have given to them by our own Constitution here in Pennsylvania, to start standing up to this judiciary, which is totally a runaway judiciary cesspool. The more I look into these things, guys, one of the stories that we're looking into is a woman who made a complaint to the Judiciary Board, and of course she got a nice letter back saying, "Oh, thank you for your letter, but we can't do anything about it," and there's no appeal on this. Now, once we're getting into this, but basically what has happened is the accuser is being judged by the accused. And, it's a sad situation. It really is. And so this past week, as we mentioned last week, we did meet Sunday, and we're putting groups together, and starting, after Labor Day, we're gonna start looking at court watchers. We're going to be calling on all candidates to have public inquiries into this judiciary, into locally here, and once again that this is where I see the value of the Independent Gazette and independent media, even here on 94.3 FM, The Talker, being able to bring these subjects up and say, wait a minute, we do want to have folks coming forward in open forums. You guys know as well as I do, if elected officials are calling for open forums and openly talking about judicial abuse, I'm going to tell you right now, folks are going to come forward. And then the third part of that, of course, is if they are elected, that they will pledge to put cameras and audio in every single courtroom, and we'll get into that in a moment. But I figured I'd let you guys jump in. Frank, do you want to? You're looking at me here.
Well, I'm just wondering, what you expect out of these elected officials. I mean,
I expect
most of them are golfing buddies with the same judges you're asking them to look into.
And that's why we need some fresh faces, and we're looking at the Melanie Medeiros, and I don't want to keep pounding the same folks, but certainly the Betsy Summers and Aaron Coffers that are not the fresh faces, and we certainly hope that they will not be puppets of the administration.
Exactly, and these are the people that we need to have elected. But unfortunately, there's too much of that. Oh, I don't vote. I'm not involved in politics. Well, again, I keep reiterating, if you're not voting, if you're allowing these people to remain in office simply because you won't get out there and you won't vote against them, and when you wind up on the other end of it, then what? Then when your children are being taken from you because you were 15 minutes late picking them up from daycare or whatever the case may be, then you might look at this in a different light. But until then, what wakes these people up to get them out to vote for the Melanie Medeiros?
Well, one of the law firms that we're looking at is Elliott and Greenleaf, and of course, Michael, Senator Greenleaf heads up the judiciary. Folks from Elliott and Greenleaf are the chair, or was the chair, for the Judiciary Board. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that really needs to be looked at, and we have to start asking serious questions of our, certainly of our elected officials. Are they going to stand up and do what's right? Quite honestly, Michael, one of my complaints about, Senator Baker is that, with the free and equal elections, and I might get into that a little bit in the next segment, but, just because you're elected as a Republican or a Democrat, that doesn't, or shouldn't, it certainly shouldn't give you a pass to call these people out and say what you're doing is inherently wrong. I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it. Don't put your hand on the Bible and swear you will uphold the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Actually, and especially when it applies to free and equal elections, and your party is holding this up. Michael?
Well, Lou, and I listened to this, and the problem is, once again, is that we have politicians who really are there to protect and promote their party, not to protect and promote the people. And I hope that there are folks like Betsy Summers, like Melanie Madeira, that do get into office and really, really push against the
establishment,
really the pressures, the establishment, establish on both ends, Lou. You and I have both been involved in politics and running for things, and we understand the pressures that you get from the establishment. If you're starting to, until you're a threat, Lou, you never get any pushback. But as soon as there's a bit of a threat, you start to get things like pushback. You start to get offers of, if you fall in line, we'll do this for you, et cetera, et cetera. And this is not what really elections are supposed to be. We're supposed to be elected by the people to do their work. And constantly, all the time, we're just doing the work of the party.
I think that there's a two-pronged thing to this, Michael. One, if once folks are elected and people know that you're really, doing the people's work, I think sometimes it's harder for the party to push back against you. Although as well as I do, what'll happen is, Michael, and certainly we have examples of this, is where the party apparatus then says, wait a minute, we need to get rid of this person because they're asking way too many questions. And hopefully what will happen eventually is if folks and candidates actually become the people's candidates, that they're not going to have to be affected by the party apparatus.
That is true, and unfortunately, we have a political system that requires you to pick a party unless you're independent, to be able to go out and try to get elected. And I really hope that there's a change in the people's thinking that I'm not looking at this party anymore. I'm looking at the individual, because of the fact that our parties have let us down, Lou, and they will continue to let us down unless we start to take some of the power from them. You talk about cameras into the courtrooms.
Thank you.
My goodness, we've got cameras all over the place, on every corner, watching us, and yet the most important part of our system, our legal system, is never watched, Lou, as if they are above corruption. Well, we know different, don't we, Lou?
We do know different, and we have precedent right here in River City and certainly in Northeast Pennsylvania, and we could probably cite places in every single courtroom around the country that not only are mistakes made, sometimes these mistakes are made on purpose. And there is absolutely no reason whatsoever not to have audio and visual of what's going on in these courtrooms. I mentioned once before that, even interviewing Congressman Marino, he said, Lou, they go up the sidebar. And is this going to be part of the court record? And judges will say no. And then he has to do an amendment to the court record to make sure that information gets in there. I don't know how many folks have come to us and said, when they can get their transcripts, it's not what would at least what they recollected.
Right.
I mean, and over and over and over again. And what we're going to hear from the family courts is that we have to protect the children. Why can't these things be there as a black box then? Because, there's way, way, way too much stuff going on.
That argues the question, who's in control of the black box?
That was brought up just this past week.
Right.
I gave a...
So who do we trust with that one? The county sheriff? Who?
Right. Well, but it's a lot harder, Frank, and that question was actually brought up to me this past week in Philadelphia. I was down there. I had to give a little speech down there, and they asked us to come down and talk about the Independent Gazette, and that exact question was brought up. But it's a lot harder to manipulate if you have a transcript, if you have an audio, and then you have somebody speaking. I mean, if all of a sudden things don't start matching up, it's a little bit harder for them to manipulate.
Then with this camera system or video that's paid for, I assume, with public monies, would it be subject to Pennsylvania right to know? And if so, then the argument that we need to protect children in a black box scenario wouldn't work well.
Maybe in the family courts it's not, but when folks come forward and saying, wait a minute, wait a minute. We have real abuse here. At least they could have themselves or their representatives, whether they have a lawyer, or they could look at this and say, wait a minute, you know as well as I do, and X, I think you brought this up, this has been a quote, the best disinfectant is transparency.
It is.
I mean, it really is. We need to take a break, and we'll get everybody back on the conversation. You listen to 94.3 FM, The Talker. If you want to join in on the conversation, the number here is 888-577-4487. We'll be back.
With Tea Party Mike, Libertarian Lou, Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Who's watching you?
Well, we're going to have cameras in the courtroom. We're going to be watching them. Calling all private eyes with your Muckraker shirts. Get to those courtrooms.
And you go get your Muckraker shirts at where? The
Muckrakerstore.com.
There you go. Michael, I got outvoted here, man. I was looking for both Sorick and Tom. Said, no, we need to shake it up here a little bit.
Right. A blast from the past. Private eyes.
So listen, Muckraker's going into the courtrooms. We certainly need that. And once again, folks, we encourage you and we ask for your help. And it's starting to happen. More folks are starting to subscribe to our publications. And it's a huge help. It really is a huge help. And certainly we encourage you to go to the Muckraker store over the weekend here while you're sitting there relaxing by the campfire. go look up that'll get your blood pressure going. Go to some of our news sites. But so anyway, Michael, one of the things that is also happening next week, I certainly hope so. I have a call into Sean Quinn, director of the FBI. I'm sure he'll get back to me. He always has. And we're going to have a sit down. And we're going to bring a whole package of stuff instead of just bringing it in bits and pieces. And he's asked me to do that. So if you're out there and you're listening and you have something that you think is important that the FBI gets to see, maybe you're in Wilkes-Barre and you have a few tidbits of information that you think the FBI needs to see, certainly contact the Independent Gazette and we will make sure that it gets into the hands of the FBI. That's one of the things, Michael.
Well, it's and this is what it's all about. It's about being active, and I'm glad to hear that the FBI is sitting down with you, because there's so much information. And it's just out of fear that so much of this information doesn't get out, Lou. And really, that's the form that we hope that people can trust the Independent Gazette with their information, knowing that they're going to be kept quiet. No one's going to know the source, and so that we can get right down to this corruption, because we know there is so much corruption, not just in northeastern Pennsylvania, but nationwide, Lou. So this is a real effort, I think, to start to put some pressure on.
I thought it was indigenous to Wilkes-Barre.
Oh, well, you actually threw me a little softball, Michael, because one of the things I want to touch on is it going on in Illinois and Chicago. And the headlines, Republicans terrorize libertarians with guns at their homes. And I said, no, this cannot be true. This cannot possibly be true. And once again, this all comes about ballot access.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to get in my shotgun load. I'm coming to your house.
And I called them and I interviewed them yesterday. And I said, can this possibly be true? And yes, certainly they've had hearings on this now, but just recently in the last 2 weeks, the Republicans once again doing everything singly possible to keep libertarians off the ballot in any way they can. Certainly that happened here in Pennsylvania, and you hear all kinds of nonsense. Lisa Baker, are you listening? It's not about, all these little minutia things that, you didn't sign the date right, or you didn't put, you abbreviated Wilkes-Barre and your Republican lawyers are saying that could be West Berlin, or if you didn't put 2014 down, that, if you just put 14, you might have signed it in 1914, and the list goes on and on. But the Republicans here, once again, in Illinois, Michael, okay, the Libertarians turned in 43,291,000 signatures. They needed 25,000, okay, to get on the ballot. And the Republicans and Democrats only need 5,000 free and equal elections. What does it say, Lisa Baker, once again, in the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that we shall have free and equal elections? But the point, Michael, is what happened was that the Republicans, and we've had this before, they hired Morrison Security. and they went and they kind of intimidated folks that signed the petitions and the circulators, and it's starting to turn into a pretty big news. Chicago Sun-Times is on this, but once again, what I'm bringing this up about, Michael, is that, you know, certainly with libertarians, Republican Party around the country is doing everything possible to ensure that we don't get on the ballot. This is not what America is supposed to be about. They shouldn't be trying to keep us off the ballot. What they need to be doing is having a better message and not worrying about what the damn libertarians are saying.
And you're right, Lou. And this is really, and again, you see the Democrats doing things similar, but for whatever reason, the Libertarian Party is a real threat to the Republican Party. And I think so, and really it's what's going on in the streets. You know, Lou, that I've been a registered Republican for, 16, 17 years. And really I'm just a Republican because of the fact that there's...
They got rules in place to make it easier for folks to be part of that. But this is not what, and we all agree. I know this is not an argument here. We all agree. But, you know, we're supposed to have free and equal elections. And until we put the pressure on these legislators to say, this is not right. Don't go there. I swear, don't go there in January and put your hand on the Bible. Put your hand on that Bible, because we're going to be watching you. And say that you're going to defend the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and then have your party, your chairman, sit there and say, we don't have time to look at this. You see, this is where we have to start, you know, really, you know, separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
Well, let me just jump in really quick.
Go ahead,
on this thing. Yeah, the thing that stands out that everyone should understand is that they keep doing, what's happening is all of the polling companies are now doing new data. And what they're finding out is that the millennials are more libertarian-leaning than any other generation before them. And this is scaring the bejesus out of them, because both Republicans and Democrats want to somehow make a claim on their political views, because this group does not fit into the paradigm of left versus right. They're fiscally conservative, and they're socially tolerant and liberal. And this is a big, big problem for them. The best example that I could give you is in the Mitch McConnell Kentucky race. The libertarian that's running for the Senate there is polling over 7%, but you would not know that there's another person if you go to Politico and look at their surveys.
I didn't even know that.
If you go to, like, they have this annual thing. Every political candidate has to go to this thing. I think it's called, like, Funny Farm, where they have to go on stage. The libertarian, he's polling over 7%. He's prevented from being on the stage.
Well, there's not a surprise. And once again, you know, that's your corrupt media. I just saw that Jesse Benton, who was the campaign manager for Ron Paul, and somehow he got involved with McConnell. He just stepped down for one various reason or another, but that's another whole different story there. But once again, this, to me, Michael and X and Frank, this has nothing to do with the Libertarian Party or anybody else for that matter. It's the fact that our legislators are, you know, they are not allowing or doing what they say they're going to do. This is a moral issue to me. I mean, we have men and women fighting all over the world to have free elections over there, and yet they're pulling this nonsense here. And we don't have a media talking about it. I know I keep beating the drum on this thing, but, you know, until we start getting legislators and folks saying, wait a minute, this is no longer accessible, is
acceptable.
Right. Well, acceptable. Why do we have the button that you hit, Frank?
The only way we're going to change that is to get the Melanie Madeiras, the Betsy Summers elected, because these are the free-thinking people that are going to say, wait a minute, something stinks here. And until that happens, until people walk into that voting booth and vote by person, not by party, and reject that party button, it's not going to change. And
their pledge means more than the party. That's what it all boils down to. Lisa Baker, don't tell me that I'm passionate about this issue. I want you to go in and make a statement to Smucker that you are an embarrassment to the people of Pennsylvania.
Understand, the minute Lisa Baker got elected, the Republican Party walked into her and said, you're here for one reason only. We put you here. And that's what she's beholden to. It's no different from Eddie Dapashinsky.
All of them,
the list goes on and on. I mean, Eddie was told that the Democratic Party got you here, you'll toe the line or else.
And that's what, and Mike and X, that's what we're saying here is that when you take that pledge, and I want to start just branding this into people's heads as best as possible. If you are elected and you put your hand on the Bible and pledge to protect and defend the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that means something to you. That means more than protecting the Republican or Democratic parties. Right. Michael, whoever wants to jump in.
Well, I think one of the things, too, that we're missing is that once you become part of that Republican Party and you get the position to run, you've got to kiss the ring of the authority. So right away, Frank made a great point, is you are now beholden, and you have to follow that into that march. It's all yours, X.
Nothing better than transparency in all dealings. A person, I love the thing, again, if you have nothing to fear, then you don't worry about transparency. And if before you put it on my grandmother or do it on my neighbor, I want a camera on you. And, obviously the cameras in a place like Ferguson probably would have stopped a lot of things over there, too.
All over the place. Right, Michael. And Frank, we're winding it down. Any last words of wisdom on this Labor Day weekend?
I just look, too. Cameras in the courtroom are no different than the cameras in Judge Judy's courtroom. And look how entertaining that is. So just imagine if we had cameras in the Luzerne County courtrooms right here, right now. I'm telling you, ratings through the roof. Service Electric, look out. You're not going to be able to handle the amount of viewers. And
it should be. I think it was Andy Ostrowski who's running for Congress. Once again, folks may not even know who he is, and he's running against Lou Barletta. But, Michael, he brings up a point that, back when, we have these big cavernous, courtrooms, and folks would fill those courtrooms just to go in and watch and see what's happening. Of course, our society has changed. Most folks don't have the time to take off anymore to go in and watch what's happening in those courtrooms. But you know what? Just like Jefferson's warned, if we allow this to go on, if not, we don't get anything else out of this, our elected officials abdicate their responsibilities, I got to tell you, man, there's something wrong with this, because we will run ramshod.
It only takes one person in Congress to say, look, we need cameras in the courtroom. Other people will come on board with this. But if you're a Lou Barletta, or if you're somebody out there, just put it in there.
Michael, you got it, buddy. We're down to it.
God bless all.
God bless everybody. Have a great Labor Day weekend, and we'll be back next week. Sanity check.